Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this roundtable conversation. Thank you for joining me. My name is Josh. As you know, I work within the marketing team in Spotify advertising. The purpose of today's conversation is to talk about culture as it's driven on Spotify by our young audience, the way that Spotify is used by young people, influences and shapes culture. I've already done me, so over to you.
Hi, I'm Josie. I work on the international music strategy team as associate manager. I've been at Spotify for about 2 years now. I started out as an intern in the same cohort as Jesley, and I was on the global music programs team then, and then transferred over to international music strategy. So.
Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm a legal assistant in the ODPO team, which is the data protection / privacy team. And I've been at Spotify for just over a year, and I was an intern last year, same cohort as Evie. So that's me.
And hi, I'm Eleanor. I've been at Spotify for 5 months, so I'm quite new here. I'm a data engineer in financial engineering, and we actually work with small podcasts from Spotify for Podcasters, and we take care of ingesting all the impressions from the ads and calculating how much they earn for the month.
I'm Evie. I started as an intern last year, and now I'm on the podcast partnerships team. So I work also mainly with podcasters using Spotify for Podcasters, so like grassroots podcasters, organic growth podcasters, and a lot of TikTokers and YouTubers who want to start a podcast, who I bring into these studios to force them to start a podcast and put it on Spotify. And yeah, I drank my coffee really fast, so now I'm talking really fast.
Also drank my coffee a lot. Well, I'm Jesley, my pronouns are they, them. I've been at Spotify for 2 years now, same start date as Josie. Also started as an intern, and I'm in the editorial team, so I'm the editorial coordinator, but I also do a lot of the like Gen Z playlists and kind of like the resident Gen Z person, which can sometimes get tiring. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you all for your introductions. You've all got really interesting jobs. And it's a great array of skills and interests that have been brought to the table today, so that's great. First of all, I'd like to ask you guys a simple question. What do you get from Spotify that you don't get from social media?
Just most social media that's like on my phone.
Yeah.
I think going on it, there's like a huge, or it's like really easy for you to start comparing yourself to people, or like finding like the ideal version of life that maybe you want but don't have, or like don't know how to get, and then it becomes really like, at first it's annoying because it's like, I don't want to see this all the time, but then over time it becomes like, it gets pretty bad. Like, you're sort of thinking like, why can't I be like this person, or like, why don't I look like that, or like, why don't I do this, blah blah blah. But then on Spotify, because it's like really it's like a very singular experience. You're just there for you, listening to what you want, vibing with yourself. It's chill. It's like you don't have to do anything, and that's fine.
Spotify's the one that is your escape from the anxiety on
that's
other
my girl
platforms.
dinner. Just put headphones on and go on Spotify.
Perfect. All right. Okay. Context needed there. So, what's a girl dinner?
A girl dinner is whatever you want it to be. It's like a mindset thing. It's like if you look at your dinner and you're like, you know what, I like this, and if other people don't, I don't care. That's my girl dinner.
Okay.
Real. That's so real.
Anyone else like to chip in?
I like being able to see what people are listening to. So I guess knowing that, it kind of makes me anxious. Like being on the app, just like, people can see, my friends can see I'm listening to Gleecast for like 6 hours a day. Like, should I go in private session? Like, I think because I work here and I know what the app offers, like, I kind of know how to manipulate it, but like, I've got friends that are like listening to like, I don't know, like, not embarrassing. I don't think any music is embarrassing to listen to. Maybe some songs. But when they do that and they're like, oh, I'm really sorry, like I'll send them like, why are you listening to the Shrek soundtrack at 4 a.m. in the morning? They're like, oh, because it's fun. And I'm like, oh, that's really embarrassing. But
I live on private mode.
Oh,
I
good for you.
love like a Hannah Montana all songs shuffle.
I do that with One Direction, and people would like send me Snapchats, be like, Jesse, like, grow up. And I'm like, oh, One Direction is our mindset. Like, it's a lifestyle. Like, but yeah, I think that aspect, I guess, is comparable to like social media, where people can kind of see what you're listening to and judge you based off of that. And I'm really like, I want to be edgy. I want to be cool, you know. I listen to like The Strokes and Arctic Monkeys. I don't listen to Taylor Swift. I do. But like, you know, on private mode. But yeah, I guess the perception.
I'm so glad that you think Arctic Monkeys are edgy. Because that is my...
Millennial core.
They're my boys. Right there. Anyone else would like to share thoughts on that question?
I'd definitely jump on Sophia's point about how it's just like a very wholesome social media or platform. It very rarely brings me any sort of like despair like the others do, or it doesn't like show you anything that you didn't plan on seeing. Like it's just a place to go to listen to the music you know you love, or be suggested music that you probably will like because the algorithms are great and the editorial team are great. And also just podcasts, I think in general, are like a very wholesome form of media to consume, even if they're made by a creator who kind of started on TikTok or lives on another platform. They usually have their best wholesome content in long form on Spotify.
How do you guys discover new music?
I think my favorite thing is radio, like song radio. You know how you always have a song playing in your mind, you just want to listen to it. But like the best thing is when you can start with that song and then do a radio and like you get to listen to that song, but also get to find out a lot of similar songs that you wouldn't otherwise. I also love the DJ feature that came out recently. That's a really good one if you just want to listen to a lot of like different things, whether it's like, I don't know, a song from 2016 or like just the new songs that you haven't listened to that are popular right now.
And also the niche mixes are so deranged and unhinged. Like the what do you call it? Like the recommendations.
Goblin core.
Yeah, Goblin core. Like I have one that's like dog walking, which is really good. I don't. It's like R&B for me, but like it could be like really like rock and hip hop for someone else. But yeah, like the niche mixes are what I use to like discover new music for myself.
Has anyone tried A-List? I think that's really
Oh,
recent.
yeah, I love that.
I just love the titles.
Yesterday it
They're
launched.
so random.
Yeah, it launched yesterday. You're jumping on it.
Can you kind of explain a little bit about what A-List is?
So I'm pretty sure, I don't actually know, but I've seen someone like working on it, on something like some similar idea during Hack Day this year, about, you know, how during the day you have different moods. So how about making a playlist that changes multiple times a day?
What's the name of your day list and top 3?
Yeah.
Oh god.
Great question.
Should I get-
Yeah,
Mine
go
is so
Okay, mine is
Lame.
Japanese rap aggressive Wednesday morning. But can I just tell you, this is my only flaw with
So
day
vivid.
list. It's all Korean rap. Like, come on,
Korean
get it
rap.
right.
What
Okay.
does that even mean? Mine says revival lip sync Wednesday morning. But I don't know what that means.
I think mine is Trio Delicate Wednesday Morning. I usually listen to rock songs, but apparently not on Wednesday. On the top there is Taylor Swift, Lizzo, Olivia Rodrigo, and Ryan Gosling, because I've been listening to the Barbie playlist.
love
so
it.
I got caught
Mine
there.
is folklore writer morning.
That's so nice.
yeah.
It's giving like cottagecore.
It is giving cottagecore. The whole thing's giving
So
cottagecore.
cool. Cottagecore.
Josh, you're just hearing
This
new
is
words
just part of
like
our-
It's like
Top
girls'
song
dinner.
is right where you left me,
banger.
which is bleak, and then making the bed, Olivia Rodrigo, and then
my
because I
God.
liked a boy, Sabrina.
Oh my god.
So actually, Taylor, Olivia, and Sabrina, what a trio!
Yeah.
And then it goes straight to Gracie Abrams. This is just so.
I want
Yeah,
your day
nice
list.
Swift
stereotype.
core.
Yeah, this is Taylor Swift core, basically. This is. The
I want
law.
your day list. That's like my ideal day list.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine is Energy Renaissance Wednesday morning, and I've got Heated by Beyonce, Summertime by Flo, and Needs by Tinashe. Give him baddie.
Cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
What's your
right.
day list,
Here we
Josh?
go. You ready for this one?
I just glanced at it and it's giving millennial. I'm sorry, Josh.
My day list is pub barbecue Wednesday morning,
Oh,
which actually sounds amazing.
It does.
So who was your number one artist on Spotify Rap?
mine was Taylor Swift.
Mine was the same. Again, I mean, I'm like, have never left her side since like 2008. I went like a bit underground Swiftie during like the Reputation era where it was like kind of uncool, and I was like 17, but she's just like always my number one artist.
I think I need to break the cycle of Taylor Swift. It wasn't my first artist. Mine was actually The Strokes, which is not extremely famous, but I just love them.
Cool. Anyone else like to comment on Wrapped?
I really like how you can sort of like see what you've been listening to, because I feel like I sort of just like listen to what I like in the moment and then I forget about it. And then when I like look back, I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then there are like a couple usually like cute surprises. Like last year, I think one of my most listened to genres was like classical music. And I was like, I don't remember listening to that at all. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, I guess I do when I work.
My constant music has been K-pop, but then like my top artist this year has been Tiago PZK, who's like a Latin artist from Argentina. And it's just like really kind of interesting to see how like that's crept up, and I only listened to that in the last few months of the year, and I completely changed my Wrapped because of it.
I have a very similar pattern with, I wonder if you can guess.
Arctic Monkeys.
Correct. The last at least 4 years or 5 years running, it's been the Arctic Monkeys, and that isn't even intentional. That's just I do try to like diversify what I listen to, and it just ends up being the same every year. What do we think is going to happen to the music industry in the next sort of, let's just say 5 years, given the speed at which AI is developing at the moment?
I think with AI, a lot of like artist deals will change regarding to the music industry, because I guess that if they want to be used by AI, they have to license their likeness and their voice, and it's kind of scary. I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror, the Miley Cyrus episode, Ashley Owen.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's basically that, and like I think it's a slippery slope, because a lot of like, I guess like manipulation and like taking advantage of like, especially like newer artists.
It's really interesting seeing the range of AI though and not taking it seriously, because I think as consumers and being on TikTok, maybe my TikTok page is really niche, but what's coming up right now is Toad from Mario Bros doing AI covers of really weird songs, and it's I know, it's hilarious, and it's just
I got a SpongeBob one.
SpongeBob, yeah, it's just a whole weird mixture of characters, and it's just very interesting, and it's easy to take AI as just like some sort of silly fun device that people are using, especially with like when you're putting your own image in and seeing how it can turn out. It feels like a fun device for people to use, but yeah,
we don't know the consequences.
Yeah, we don't know the consequences and the impact it's going to have on artists, and I think it's what you're both saying there. Like, I think authenticity and an artist's creativity and them making it themselves is always going to be better than AI. We all crave realness like today, and I think that's what Gen Z have been screaming about. But
being real,
be real. But
All right, here's a question. So, what are some songs and pop culture moments from different generations that you often listen to or vibe with?
oh, for me, probably just because my parents have influenced my music taste so much. I've built a playlist where my mum literally dictated, add this one in. This was a hit back in like the 80s.
Yeah.
So it's like full of like Duran Duran, The Human League. It's kind of like my wholesome like playlist where I'm feeling lonely and I'm like, I can't listen to this K-pop trash anymore. Like, give me something real. But yeah, I go back to that as comfort music, but I think it's like what Jesley was saying earlier with like people going back to the 2012 Tumblr era, and like I listen to a lot of The Neighborhood and Melanie Martinez.
Oh my god.
I
The
know.
Neighborhood.
Going back at that kind of era.
For me, I listen to a lot of rock, which is kind of not as popular as it used to be in the old days, as they say. You know, now you listen to a lot of pop everywhere. And, you know, which is why I like Maneskin so much. They're kind of like reviving the old rock band. And I really like that.
Yeah.
I think one of the funniest thing is listening to songs that were popular when you were like too young, know the name of the song, you just hear it. And then you're like, oh, that's the title, that's the artist. Like, I've listened to this song so many times when I was, you know, too young to look it up. And it's like, it's really fun to be able to go back to it. And
Yeah.
like, oh, this was popular at the time.
Yeah, it fascinates me because it was, you know, pre-internet, just before the internet took off. So the likes of Blur, Oasis, that was when, you know, people were still, it was all about the gig and it was all about buying records, vinyl, like you said before.
I think the CDs and vinyls era is really interesting. I think especially for K-pop. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop going on about K-pop in a second, but it just
No,
has to-
keep
You
going.
carry
keep
on.
going.
Go for it.
But it's just I feel like the revival of CDs is mostly due to K-pop, and I don't think that a lot of the music industry has gotten that it's not about the CD or playing the CD. You play the music on Spotify. It's more about what you can get in the CD. You can get these exclusive pictures. You can get the like exclusive photo cards, and it's like there's one of trillions of versions that you can buy of these CDs, which is why people are buying them.
I think like we're all still old enough to have been around in the era where you could like buy a CD and that was
Yeah.
how you bought music. So maybe that's why Gen Z like still likes vinyl and CDs, because it still feels like we want to own the album. And I'm kind of sad that we missed out on like being able to buy an album for a friend.
But I just wanted to ask you, like, how did you find music?
My dad, really, he was the one sole influencer in my life. I would just listen to whatever he wanted to listen to, often in the car. He wouldn't let me and my sister out the car until a song had finished.
I'll be like that.
We would drive, we would get home, and we'd be parked outside the house. We're like, right, out. And then he would be like, nope, lock the door. Yeah. And he wouldn't let us out until a song had actually finished. But that really did provide me with the foundation to go on and, develop, affection for bands like Arctic Monkeys, Queens of Stone Age. I love, I'm a big rock and roll fan at heart, but I also love, house, drum and bass and that kind of stuff too. And that's all come from, later influences in life, maybe going to university and mingling with other people and discovering new genres there. Yeah, like radio, like I would tape songs from the radio using a cassette. And when it was like the top 40 every Sunday evening, and I would sit in my bedroom with like an old school cassette player, and you'd hit record by pressing record and play at the same time, and you would record the songs as they're played on the radio onto a cassette. What international artists or genres have you discovered recently?
It's TikTok. Sorry. Not forced me. It was all over my For You page. Na, 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 na. That song where it's like Eslabon.
Esteban Amado?
Yeah, I think he's like one of the biggest. The song is one of the biggest songs in like this year on Spotify, I think.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so good, and I listen to it while I'm cleaning.
I have a playlist where I basically dump any other like non-English language songs into. And I think besides from it mostly being Latin and Tiago, because he is my top artist, favourites is Fasup. And he doesn't show his face. He's basically like a cartoon character. His album artwork looks like a kind of Where's Wally picture. It's so cool.
I love Where's Wally.
Yeah, you'd love Fasup
school.
then. He's just great. His music is just so wonderful to listen to. I can't even describe it. It's just really interesting to see how you imagine other countries' music to sound like, and the artist kind of shock you, and it just be very engaging and interesting.
Yeah, I was just going through like new rock
Justin
music
Bieber.
just because I wanted to hear, like I always listen to old rock music, like what's a new one.
Yeah.
And there was this playlist that had like people from all over the world. Like there is, I think it was like a Norwegian band that had some really nice songs. I don't remember the name of though. But one that really stuck to me is Camionero, which like they're based in Buenos Aires and they have some really cool rock songs.
So yeah, let's talk podcasts. What podcasts are you guys currently listening to? What are the the general subjects that are discussed, and which genre of podcasts would be your guilty pleasure?
I listen to Call Her Daddy.
Okay.
I think it's just so well done, and also I think the guest curation is just really good. On that note, I think my guilty pleasure with podcasts would be the horoscopes one. I listen to my daily one.
The ones that I enjoy just anyway are Goes Without Saying. That's been my favourite one for years. I think that's the one that got me into podcasts, which is, yeah, very like just a pop culture-y one. It's kind of pop culture, but also self-development, very kind of, very Gen Z, I'd say that podcast is. And then I love Match Made in Manhattan. That's like some American like YouTubers, influencers that make a dating podcast, basically.
I've been listening a lot to some psychology podcasts and about like personal development as well. I feel like it kind of really helps me like relate to the creator. One of them is like psychology of your 20s. I don't know if you've heard it, but like she's so nice. She's so
best.
lovely, and like she just like talks about like such important topics so lightly, and like she's so relatable. But at the same time, kind of like she filters down like all of the research that she does.
I think the only one I listen to, and it's kind of weird, is The Diary of a CEO.
Yes. I'm glad you said that.
And that's literally just because I went for a Dragon's Den phase, because I basically, I knit and I like having background noise on, so I went for like a Dragon's Den binge watch, and I was like, he's a Stephen guy. He's like down with the kids. He knows his social media. So then I just got hooked on that podcast, and just, I like the guests. They kind of bring interesting perspectives, and yeah, there's some interesting characters on there, and he always kind of brings out like kind of deep stuff from them which you wouldn't really expect, but
No.
yeah, it's a bit of an odd one. But
Are there any kind of like icks that you guys have when it comes to podcasts and like
Speaking our language.
stuff? Is there, stuff that you, when you say speak language, I know the meaning. Stuff that you would change.
I'd say I have two strong podcast icks. Both of them are risky and could offend many of my like creator partners. But the first one is like really overproduced content, like content that's just got this like really flashy set or setup, but actually just cover up from the fact that like the actual content's just rubbish, or like they don't actually have a meaningful conversation.
hot takes.
Oh yeah, shots fired.
Don't need to name names.
And then, I mean, to be honest, most of them are like, I'm picturing like American ones, or I don't know, but. And then the other one is not necessarily an ick, but more just an ick about like when a new podcast launches and it's just like more men, and then it does really well, and then everyone's like, oh my god, and I'm just like, why? It's so not groundbreaking. But that's just more of a like industry ick rather than a podcast itself ick. But yeah, in terms of like actual podcast icks, overproduced stuff I find icky when you could just make it really authentically, and it's probably going to be better.
Still on podcasts, do you guys think, how do you guys think it compares when you like compare learning traditional content through, I don't know, academic studies or any other kind of channel? How do you guys learn from podcasts? Like, is there a difference there in the way that you consume content? And actually like process it?
I think maybe it goes back to depth. Like it allows you to, for example, like pop culture podcasts. There are some really great pop culture podcasts that aren't surface level. They're very like, they really unpack what's happened. And if there's some sort of, I don't know, beef between two celebrities or something's happened in pop culture that normally you see the top level of it and then you're like, whatever, you just keep scrolling and move on to the next thing. There are some really amazing pop culture podcasts that actually allow you to get a bit deeper and learn about what that means about like where culture's going, where society is.
All right, thanks everyone again for contributing today. It's been a journey for me. I've definitely learned a few things. Great. All right. Okay.